The mind could be your best friend or your worst enemy. It's up to you. The first time I ever got on a mic, it just felt like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. We laid it down every single night, man. We would break bones, be all in. No matter what hell we were going through, music was the salvation. My father almost beat my mom to death several times. The state put us in bad foster homes. We were being molested and beaten. They were getting money to take care of us and abusing the shit out of us. Went on the streets, 76, 77, I was hustling. I got shot, I got stabbed. I would be up for like 3 days on crack and then wake up like, let's go get some wheatgrass. And my man would be like, motherfucker, you need a straitjacket. This is when I hit below rock bottom. And then I went to the Hare Krishna temple. I said, if you don't let me move in here, I'm gonna be dead. And that's when I climbed out of the hell. Purged myself with the drugs and the alcohol. I started getting really fit. Studied martial arts as a Hare Krishna, so I was like this fighting monk dude. I went and did the Ironman with a stress fracture in my foot. Pain is gonna go away, but the pain of giving up on something, that's gonna stay with you for a long time.
This week on the show, I have John Joseph, who is the musician, the author, and the triathlete, best known as the lead singer of the punk hardcore band, the Cro-Mags. John has been there and done that. He used to hang out on the mean streets of the East Village in New York, where I used to live, but he faced child abuse, drug addiction, and he really went big on the Cro-Mags. Now, today, he's a vegan triathlete. He has a book called Meat is for Pussies that I'm reading now and I love. And John has got the craziest stories I've ever heard on London Real. He really embraced veganism 35 years ago. He went into the Hare Krishna movement and then would go back into the punk hardcore scene. Then would go smoke crack for a couple years and then come back. He's rebuilt his life and he's a real inspiration for me, and I know you're gonna love this epic conversation with John. If you don't like punk or hardcore or any of this stuff scares you, watch this anyways, because I'm telling you, it's absolutely epic. And of course, I'm here on the roof deck of the brand new London Real World headquarters, and inside we're busy cooking up our Life Accelerator for 2018. It's this incredible 6-week online accountability program where we stack up 18 high-performance habits and literally transform you as a human being. If you want to absolutely crush 2018, this thing is for you. So come find us, click on the link inside London Real Academy. And now I leave you with the stage jumping, hardcore, crazy motherfucker, John Joseph. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is John Joseph, the musician, author, and triathlete, best known as the lead singer of the hardcore punk band, the Cro-Mags. Growing up on the streets of New York City, you survived abuse, drug addiction, prison, and later a violent stint in the Navy. You credit the Hare Krishna movement for helping you get through your darkest times. You're a hardcore vegan, and your book, Meat is for Pussies, a how-to guide for dudes who want to get fit, kick ass, and take names. At 55 years old, you compete regularly in Ironman triathlons, raising money for charity, and you're here in London on tour with the Cro-Mags. John, welcome to London.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
It's awesome to be here. First of all, tell me, London, the music scene. You've been coming here for a long time.
Incredible.
What's incredible about it? What makes it different?
It's just people really appreciate music. They come out to the shows. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just a spirit. We've been coming here since the mid-'80s, touring with Motorhead and GBH, and we just always had a lot of love, and London had a lot of love for us. So,
how was it different than New York City?
New York, I don't know, man. Sometimes people are like, I don't want to fucking go out to the show or whatever. But I don't know. It's just an energy the city has, and I think New Yorkers get jaded a little too much. It seems.
Is that lately or back in the day as well?
Yeah, like now, you know, it's just like, and a lot of bands come through, so it's like, I don't know.
And back in the day when you would come to London in the 80s, were the fans as hardcore as you would see them at CBGB's?
Oh, yeah,
or not?
I got Discharge's record in 1980, and I grew up on The Clash, Sex Pistols, the whole shit, so you gotta imagine. I saw the Ramones in 77 when I was a kid, and where I sold drugs, they would hang out at Forest Park. And so, like, the whole punk thing, to me, England was a big part of that for me. And then getting to come here and play, and it was like, this is kind of, people say, the Ramones started punk, but I think, bands like The Clash, who I saw in New York at Bonds when the riot happened, the fire department came in and closed it down. So there's just so much history and great bands that, I remember I heard this record live at the Vortex in like 1979 or whatever. It was some live club here, and just great music, man. I always tell this story, like I was in the Navy and down in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was the only squid on the whole base walking around with like Sex Pistol Destroy shirts. So when I went to the local punk bar, I like put on a fake British accent. Everybody thought I was British, because like it got the girls. And then, I don't know, they're like, hey man, your accent's going away. And I'm like, must be from hanging with you fucking wankers. But,
So you always had a bit of homage. You were paying
I always
England.
gave respect to the London music scene, and just so many great bands came out of here, not just punk. Suitsy and the Banshees. I was, fans of just so many. I remember I was working security at this hip hop club in New York in the '80s, and the guys from who did songs from the Big Chair was. What was their name? Come on.
Songs
Shout, let it on.
I should know that. I don't know. Wait,
oh, you failed.
I should know. America.
I'm having an old man moment here.
That's right. It's what they came in.
Yeah, and I was like, I love your band. He's like, hey man, fucking don't try to take the piss out of me. He's looking at me, and I'm like, Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, man. I put that fucking record on with my girl, and we just chilled. And he like couldn't believe like
that a hardcore guy like you.
That a hardcore dude. I did security for Red Alert, so he wanted to meet, whatever. He was.
So you like all sorts of types of music?
Yeah, I grew up in New York. It was the melting pot. When I was incarcerated in '78, it's the first time I heard the word homeboy, like in hip hop, and I was in the South Bronx. So like hip hop had just started, really, with Africa Bambaataa and all that stuff going on up there.
And you got a dose of it when you were
I got a dose of it. It wasn't, I saw Led Zeppelin at the Garden in '77 and all the, I don't know if you read my book, The Evolution of a Cro-Magnon, but
no.
Foster Homes went on the streets, '76, '77, I was hustling. So one of the gigs I had with this junkie dude was to sell fake LSD at the concerts in Madison Square Garden. So we was like, this guy was an expert at making fake drugs, fake hash, fake pills, fake whatever.
Wow.
So I would, trade acid for tickets and get real acid and then trip and go to see like Black Sabbath and all the bands at the Garden.
Let's talk about New York City back in the day. So look, my only point of reference, you wouldn't know it by looking at me, but when I left school in Boston, I moved to New York City in '93, and I was drawn to the East Village, right? I was working as a banker, but all my boys were living Upper East, Upper West, and I thought it was fucking boring as sin. And I moved to the edge of the East Village, 10th Street, 3rd Avenue. Later, I moved down to Red Square, right? Yeah. Avenue A in Houston. And I was there in '93, so Giuliani had started coming in, and there were cops everywhere, but still, St. Mark's Place, you could get a little flavor of what was going on, and still, you wouldn't go into Alphabet City. I remember there was some place between C and D called Body Heat, where they would sell like drugs right there in the place. Yeah. And there were some places I would venture down, but I could kind of see what it was like. Maybe I could see a glimpse of what it was like when you were there. Right. But tell me, what was that area like back when you were there, 70s, 80s? And what would I have seen in '93? Anything left?
Well, to backtrack, there's a great little documentary. It's called New York '77, The Coolest Year in Hell. So that's like about the time I started, when I ran away from St. John's Home for Boys. Just to backtrack, my father was a pro fighter, tried to, almost beat my mom to death several times. The state put us in bad foster homes, and where every fucked up thing you could imagine was happening to me and my two brothers. And then they closed that home down, the state, and then put us in different places. So I ended up.
And you were growing up in New York City?
Yeah, New York City, yeah.
Right, as in Manhattan?
No, well, the foster home was in Long Island.
Okay.
And then when '74 hit, they closed that house down.
And you're born in '62, right?
Yeah, 1962.
Okay.
So then they put us in all these other foster homes and boys' homes. So I ended up in one in Rockaway Beach. So I'm seeing the Ramones hanging out and and getting into punk and all that. So then I ran away from St. John's, and I was a drug mule for the people that sold heroin in Rockaway, these junkies. So I would go down to Alphabet City.
Okay.
And cop bundles of heroin and take it back on the train.
And that's where all the heroin was going through.
Alphabet City. They had a saying. They called it Alphabet City because it's Avenue A, Avenue B, Avenue C, Avenue D. So when I went to go meet the contact the first time, this dude Papo, he's like,
it's all Puerto Rican down there, right?
All Puerto Rican and Dominicans.
I know cops that wouldn't go down there.
Yeah, no, the cops would pay. The 9th Precinct was referred to as the Dirty Ninth. So it was like the cops were on the take. They wouldn't bust the drug dealers. But he told me, yo, you know what them letters stand for? He said, if you go to Avenue A, you're adventurous. B, you're bold. Avenue C, you're crazy. Avenue D, you're dead. And he's like, you don't never come down here by yourself. If you're a Blanco, if you're a white boy, you better have an escort. So I write all about this in my book. So
and how old are you at this point?
I'm 14.
What's 14-year-old John Joseph like? You're not talking to mom and dad anymore.
Well, my father was out of the scene since '69. He tried to murder, he was fucked up. I didn't talk to him at all. And then my mother kept promising. I'm writing a film about my book now, and it's like, I adapted it, but that's the main, I guess the through line of the script is the relationship between this boy, me, and my mother, who always kept promising she was going to take us out of this abusive home where we were being molested and everything else and beaten. But
the foster home.
Yeah,
okay.
But my mother tried to commit suicide a few times, and then we didn't want to upset her. So we wouldn't tell her what was happening in the foster home to us, but she kept promising to take us out of the foster home.
What was happening in the foster home?
Everything, starved, beaten. The older 18-year-old kids were molesting me and my brothers, and it was just, and you couldn't say nothing to nobody. They made us climb in poor boxes. They fed us she would scrape the filling off of Oreo cookies and spit it in a bowl and feed it to us. And they were getting money to take care of us and abusing the shit out of us. Okay. So it just made me very angry. And then my mother got this new boyfriend that didn't want us around. So it was like, you know, we've since squashed the whole thing, but she was like, yeah, I chose this guy over my kids and I can never take that back. But my mother was a nervous wreck. We came home on one visit and I was like, when are you taking us out of here? Bad things are happening to us. And then she just lost it and took all these pills. We had to call my uncle. Like, she was fucking trying to cut her wrist. It's, you know.
So you're trying to protect her at the same time.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
A lot to put on a kid, so that does
So
things to
then
your
when
head.
I got to a certain point, I was like, nobody's ever going to put their hands on me again. When I went on the streets, I developed a reputation. Even at 14, 15, when I got locked up, I was the only white boy in Spofford Correctional Facility in the Bronx where Mike Tyson and all the badasses went. But if I couldn't beat you with my hands, I would put a pipe or a bat or whatever I needed to do to defend myself. I mean, I saw people I got shot, I got stabbed, I seen people get murdered in front of me. So that's just how New York was. I don't brag about it and try to act like I looked for it. It found you. You would mind your business in New York and shit would come to your doorstep and you better be ready to deal with it. It's none of this. Now you see a lot of this shit talking and all that. None of that existed.
It would just happen.
It would just happen.
Off.
Yeah, shit would
Sucker
just
punch,
happen.
bam, bam, bam. You
Or
better be ready.
stab or whatever, like, you know.
And now, on top of that, you're going down to Alphabet City running heroin,
Yeah.
so you increase
Well,
your
that
chances.
lasted a little while, and some things happened between the dudes that was selling it. The one guy robbed the other guy, and it was just always something.
Okay.
It was always something. My first girl that I really cared about OD'd and died.
Heroin.
Yeah.
So it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. And the thing was, as soon as they heard that the dope was powerful and somebody, OD'd, everybody would go look for that brand. And they branded all the heroin like
Right, like American Gangster. They
like
talk about
Poison.
the blue.
They had all these different names for it, and like that's the brand people would go run for.
So
you
the
know,
OD would be your marketing.
Yeah, like
That's crazy. All right, so you're 14, 15,
yeah.
getting involved in this scene, going down to the East Village originally for heroin trade. But then what? You started getting into the culture down there?
I met this punk rock girl, and she, like I went to Max's Kansas City the first time, and
Where was that?
that was on like 17th. It's right by where the W Hotel is now,
Okay.
like 17th and Union Square East.
Okay.
So Max's Kansas City was right there.
Okay.
It was the big punk club. So the first time I ever went there, my friend, it was like there was a bar on the ground floor, then upstairs was the bands and then the VIP. So my friend goes, we took 2-and-alls because 14th Street was like the dope park. So we bought these like pills that one could knock down a horse, and we took 2 each. So I'm like drooling on myself.
What are they, Quaaludes or something?
2-and-alls.
2-and-alls. What are those?
That's like a barbiturate.
Barbiturate,
Yeah,
okay, so
it's
just-
like these red and blue pills.
Okay.
And then I just was so messed up. And then I see the door fly open, and these punk rockers are just kicking the shit out of this dude. And it was all Johnny Thunder's people. And then he had gone. My friend that I went there with, this dude Crazy Dave, went inside and was stealing people's money off the bar and drinking their drinks. And they caught him. And then he crawls over to me, and he's like, yo, John, help. He's all fucking. Then they were like, you're with him, and then I got the shit beat out of me.
Because you can't fight on those pills.
Well, I wouldn't have been able to fight against these guys anyway. Like, even if I was sober, they were fucking, like, huge.
Okay, and you're a teenager then.
Yeah, and I'm, like, 14 years old. So that was my first introduction. It was definitely initiation by fire. I got the shit beat out of me and then kept coming around. Then I met this girl who was a punk rocker chick, and, kind of hit it off with her a bit, and then was going to CB's and got into the punk stuff, but I still liked rock music too, like Sabbath and all that.
So I went to CBGB's in '93 when my roommate used to play there. I'm sure it wasn't like what it was there, but it was still CB's.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still dark, and the wood and the bathroom was the worst thing you ever seen in your life, and it had the flavor. I mean,
that urinal's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It is now.
Yeah.
I remember that thing. It was Awesome. So what was CB's like, and when did you start going there? And was that where things started to happen, or when did you start knowing that you wanted to be a musician? Because
you know, that's a good question, because I always was attracted to music, and I wrote about this in my book, because no matter what hell we were going through, music was the salvation. Like, you know, my father would break down the door, and he got ordered by the court to pay my mother money to take care of us. So she would cash the check, so it looked like, okay, I gave her the money, and then he would break down the door, beat her up, and take all the money. So even during those times when we were on the run from him, my mother would put Motown 45s on, and I remember so vividly, like, all the pain, everything that we were going through, it was music. Once my mom put on Motown 45s and we were dancing around, me, her, and my two brothers, we just went into another place. And even in the foster home, the worst shit was happening, and I found this AM radio somebody threw in the garbage with the earpiece, because it was like smashed up a little bit. So every night I would just put the earphone in and listen to, like, you know, ABC, Harry Harrison, and all the, you know, for lack of a better term, I was just into the black music because of what the people were going through, the black people in America at that time. Their music was just, you know, Sly and the Family Stone and Marvin Gaye, what's going on, and, you know, all that incredible music was
protest music.
Yeah, just like, but from the soul, you know,
Yeah.
it was beyond just like political bullshit. It was like some real shit, and I just could identify with it. And then I heard Iggy Pop in '75 and Bowie, and then I was in another foster home, the other one that got shut down. So they nicknamed me Bowie, because I got this like Bowie haircut, platform shoes, and I'm in like Garden City, New York, which is like, everybody's wearing the crocodile shirts. It's all yuppies. And I roll up like with my two brothers in his foster home, and I made him take me to the black neighborhood to buy me clothes. And I was still into the music. And then I got wind of, like, you know, the Sex Pistols and all that. And then it was just, I'm like, and the Ramones, and that's just what I identified with, you know. And
is there still some of that kind of soul music, though,
yeah, I listen to
in
it
the
all the
Cro-Mags
time.
stuff?
Yeah, of course. Our drummer played in Fun Loving Criminals, and fucking, like, you know, we have very diverse musical backgrounds. So
Okay. Because on most people who aren't trained would see Cro-Mags and say, it's just a bunch of crazy, angry white boys.
yeah, nah, but, you know, we're the blackest white boys out there. You know, Mackey's in Martha Cooper's books for graffiti. He ran with all the early graffiti heads in New York, bombing trains, doing top to bottoms. Like, Mackey he wrote Hyper and Mackey. He's a world famous graffiti artist. Like, I try to tell him to do canvases. He could travel all over the world and sell canvases. Like, he's down with Futura and all the early graffiti people. Okay. He's like legendary, and grew up on soul music, and now guitar player, you know.
Okay, you mentioned the Izod shirts, right? And so tell me, what's happening with hardcore music right around then? I mean, it's a rejection of where music, you didn't want it going. The punk scene is starting. You know, you're feeling a little bit of what's going on in hip hop in the South Bronx, but how does it all start to come together?
Well, the
for you?
hardcore, I gotta tell you, it was the main band that really flipped it for me was the Bad Brains. I met them. I was going through crazy shit. I got out of lockup. I reoffended. I caught another case, so they were gonna give me 4 to 6 upstate in like Goshen or one of these fucked up places.
Which will make you
I
turn
caught
you
a
into
drug
savage.
case.
Drug case, not assault. Drug case.
Nah.
Okay.
And then my mother was dating a Navy recruiter at the time, so he said, look, I could get you in the Navy for 4 years, or you're gonna do 4 years lockup. And I just was like, the state didn't raise no fool, give me the 4 years in the Navy. So I tried to do the right thing when I went in. I came out of lockup, I was boxing, I put on 35 pounds of muscle, just fucking training every day like an animal. And even when I went to boot camp, I was the company commander, the PT officer. They made me, so I had to train everybody to do push-ups and just everything. So then the guy told me about the SEAL program, and I passed the initial test, and then there was like preconditioning, and I got my knee
You went to
tweaked.
Buds training in
No,
San
I didn't
Diego.
go to Buds.
Oh, you did the
I
initial
went
test?
preconditioning to go to a Buds class, and I got hurt, and then they sent me down to my command, which was in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was already into punk.
Okay.
So like, when I got down to Norfolk, I was going to this place called the Taj Mahal. Then, and it was funny because right about then my knee started healing, and then they wanted me to go to preconditioning in Little Creek because that's where the SEALs are down there. Okay. So I met with those guys a few times and trained with them. But at the same time, I started really getting into the punk thing. I had a girlfriend down there, and I just couldn't identify with the Navy people.
Okay,
and I was selling drugs.
You were selling drugs?
I was smoggling drugs on the ship. I was a fucking complete maniac.
What kind of drugs? Doing drugs?
Quaaludes, weed, cocaine, whatever.
Okay. You ever think about what your life would have been like if you had been a SEAL? A lot of SEALs are like you.
Yeah.
They're crazy fuckers, right?
Yeah, I do think about that sometimes, like the difference. My boy's a frogman, and I was like, and he's very well known. He was in that movie, and I was like, yo, I told him because like he invited me to the movie premiere for that movie he was in, Act of Valor.
Okay.
And I was like, I gave up. He's like, you've done so much more in your life. That was the path you were supposed to take. Because in the Navy, they gave me a psychological evaluation. Because when I was in lockup, I had to see a psychiatrist the whole time.
And you were in lockup for selling drugs?
I was in lockup for assault,
okay,
selling drugs, and breaking and entering.
Okay. While you're in the Navy?
2 drug cases, no. Okay. I got locked up as a juvenile, right. Did my time, and then caught a drug case for heroin. I had hanging out with junkies, and they caught me with some heroin, and then I had the option, to do whatever. So I chose the Navy, but I was getting high the whole time. They didn't piss test back then.
Okay.
And then.
And you said the psychological evaluation.
Yeah,
what did it say
they
about
said
you?
I was a time bomb waiting to go off. And, it was pretty, like, the local people didn't let any Navy people hang out at the bar at the Taj Mahal. But then I would go there anyway and just be like, fuck you. Like, I've been going to punk clubs since the 70s. So then, like, some rednecks came in there and started shit, and then I just fucking beat, like, 3 of them down with a bar stool and just fucked them up. And then they were like, all right, you can hang out. And then I saw the Teen Idols and the Untouchables, Ian MacKay's band from Fugazi and Minor Threat. And then, like, a month later, the Bad Brains came down there. And I write about it in my book, because I was like, I used to go off the base every day in my car, in my uniform during working hours, get off the base, put my punk rock clothes on, and go for the happy hour and whatever, and see the band sound checking. So I pull in, and the guy comes running out. He's like, you have to see this fucking band. I'm like, all right, he's like, no, you don't understand. They're black. And I went upstairs, and it was the Bad Brains, and they just blew me the fuck away.
Tell me about the Bad Brains.
Unbelievable. Like, I met him in 1980, I think it was like April, and they had just started to get into Rastafari. Like, this guy, Ray Chinna, who was like friends with all the people in Jamaica, the Bob Marley camps, whatever.
Yeah. So I saw the Bob Marley movie, and that's the first time I started understanding the Rastafari movement. I mean, it's there's a lot to it.
Yeah, it's deep, because before I met the Bad Brains, I went to Jamaica with my ship, and I was smuggling weed back. So I get off the ship. So they show you on the ship, everywhere you're going, they sit you down, and they show you a video about where you're going. There's movie. So they show me Jamaica, and they go, under no circumstances should you talk to these people if they approach you. And it was Rastas. And I'm like, because they're going to try to sell you weed. And I was like, yeah, exactly. First motherfuckers I try to find off the ship, boom. And I would always go by myself. I hated everybody on my ship, except for this one biker dude. He was cool. We smoked weed. So I met this Rasta, and I was like, look, I want to get 3 pounds of weed and smuggle it back. Lamb's bread. He's like, he was like, "Mom, we got you, Mom. We take you up to the hills, Rasta. We carve out some statues. We put it inside, blah, blah, blah." You know, wood carvings. And then he was eating this container of like seaweed and fucking greens and all this shit. Callaloo, Aki. I'm like, "Yo, what the fuck is that?" He's like, "Man, this Aital. Aital is vital. If you eat this, you live to be 120 Taras." I was like, "Let me try that shit." I was like, pfft. Tasted disgusting, like dirt. I'm like, "Fuck that. Not ready for that." Anyway, got my weed, got it back.
That was your first taste of the vegan diet.
Yeah, horrible. And then I met the Bad Brains in Norfolk. They played the show. And I was like, what the fuck are these guys? I mean,
Black, hardcore.
Black, growing dreadlocks, and the best. And I'm going to tell you right now, I saw Led Zeppelin, I saw Sabbath, I saw Yes, I saw the Stones, I saw The Who, I saw, you name it, I've seen the bands play. Whether punk rock or big arenas. No band to this day could ever touch the Bad Brains in a live performance. Nobody. And if you want a sample of it, put on CBGB's Bad Brains Live 1982, watch the whole set. That's when they were at their peak. So I see them and I'm like, what the fuck are these guys about? I have to meet them.
What makes a band so great live?
Their energy, and they had a real spiritual energy about them. He was talking about PMA, positive mental attitude, you know, Napoleon Hill, literature.
They're quoting Think and Grow Rich?
Yo, like,
what the hell?
Not Think and Grow Rich. There's another book that he put out that
okay.
I forget what the title is.
You're blowing my mind here.
No,
I'm thinking Skinhead White Boys. Now we got Bad Brains in here talking about Napoleon Hill.
Nah, but it wasn't skinheads back then. That skinhead shit, people might have shaved their heads, but it wasn't skinheads. In America, it was just like, Ian MacKay shaved his head. Henry Rollins shaved his head. That didn't make you, this whole thing of the whole skinhead shit being racist. The original Rude Boys, which I loved coming out of here, listening to the specials and all the early shit, it was a melting pot here, just like it was in America. Blacks and whites hanging out, black skinheads. I knew this English skinhead named Errol, and he was fucking cool as shit. Like, nobody gave a fuck about what color you were. You were in a scene and everybody else was against you. So we stood together and like would fight anybody. So then I met the Bad Brains, and then I started going up to DC with meeting Henry and hanging out with all those cats. And then the Rednecks in Georgetown, and every place we would go to 930 Club and go to shows, the fucking Rednecks or the Marines would just start fucking wanting to fight us. And then it's like you're fighting, you know, everybody. So I started really developing a bond with the people from the scene, and I was like, this is where the fuck I belong. Okay. This is my tribe. I never had a family. This is my family. This is where I belong. Like, I have so much in common with these people. And then I started getting in trouble in the Navy. I was selling drugs. I sold to an undercover at the King's Head Inn where 999 played. And I sold to an undercover. They locked me up. That was a civilian case. So that case is pending. Meanwhile, there was one redneck on my ship that kept fucking with me. And I'm like, most people go into the Navy just because they're lost. They don't know what the fuck to do with their life, whatever. I went into the Navy out of necessity. I'm like, I'm not going back to jail. You know, I knew if I didn't go in the Navy, I would probably be dead or in jail. That's not a cliche. And I was like, he just kept calling me fucking New York faggot. And I'm like, motherfucker, I'm telling you, bro, back the fuck up. Like, everybody else had enough sense to leave me the fuck alone. Even my first class petty officer. I trained with him because he used to train the SEALs in Coronado. He was the hand-to-hand combat instructor, so he was the one pushing for me to go back, try to get into BUD/S or whatever. So he was training me in Taekwondo, and he liked me. He actually caught me smoking weed out at sea and didn't fucking rat me out, which was like tremendous, because he was, you know, they said he worked for the Navy Special Investigations or whatever. Like, on his last command, he busted some people smuggling. And there was a lot of smuggling going on my ship, and I think that's why they put him there. Okay. But he never caught on to me.
The redneck
just kept fucking with me. He was a deck ape like me, a boatswain mate. And he just kept fucking with me, and then we pulled out and to see, and I was just having a bad day. I had oral surgery, 2 wisdom teeth extracted, and it was killing me. And he just said the wrong thing to me, and he was in the paint locker, and I just walked in. They call it dog in the hatch. Locked him in, and I picked up a paint can, and I just beat him till he shit his pants. And then they put me under arrest, and we're gonna like fucking keep me until the deployment was over. And my mouth got infected so bad they had to medevac me by helicopter off the ship in the middle of the Caribbean back to Puerto Rico, to the hospital where I spent like 2 weeks. And then they were like, all right, we're sending you back to Norfolk. And they forgot to cut my orders that I was a prisoner. Sent me back to Norfolk, and I was going out. And then the guy who ran the transient personnel unit was like, yo, gave me the nod, like, your ship's coming back today. And I was like, really? He gave me the heads up. So I got on the grabbed like a bag of shit, because I knew I was going to lockup. I had a civilian drug case and then this case on the ship. Yeah. So I was on this ship and just fucking got on the bus going out Hampton Boulevard, and I just right there at the light was the first class master at arms, the 2 cops off my ship, walk into Nimitz Hall to get me, which was right there. And all they had to do was look up and they would have seen me. And I just slouched down a little bit. The bus rolled out the gate and I never looked back. Fucking hung out with some punks in Norfolk and then went up to DC. I stayed with Henry Rollins and Ian MacKay for like 2 weeks.
And this is Black Flag is going on
Black
at this point.
Flag. He was
you're AWOL.
He was in SOA originally, which was State of Alert, which is his first band. Okay. Yeah, I was AWOL. This was before Black Flag.
Okay.
So then I saw the Bad Brains again, and they went to New York. So I hung around DC, and then I caught a hitchhike with this band, the Undead, Bobby Steele, who was in the Misfits. Okay. Gave me a ride. I get out the van, and there's HR standing in front of 171A. Avenue A and 10th Street, big drug block, and I just fucking went into the studio and hung out with them, and
you started getting close with Bad Brains.
Got close to Bad Brains. I didn't get a job though until there was a drug gang there called the Hitmen, and they had the biggest heroin cocaine spot in the United States. They controlled that whole corner.
10th and A.
11th between A and B. And 10th, all the lookouts were. And they controlled the bodega on the corner. And then 171, where the Bad Brains lived, was right there. So there was punk rock gigs. So the last thing they wanted was punk rockers out on the sidewalk and bringing attention to their shit.
Right.
So these dudes, Crazy Eddie, this guy, went in and started smacking the punks around and pulling knives on people and trying to stab them. So I said to the guy who owned the studio, I'm like, yo, let's fuck these guys up. Like, because everybody was intimidated by blacks and Puerto Ricans. I'm like, I grew up with these motherfuckers my whole life. It's like, they're like, I see no difference between me and them. No matter who you are, if you pull shit, then it's going to be, we're going to throw down. So Jerry was like, yo, they're this gang. They kill people. Don't fuck with them. So the dude tried to stab me outside. Blocked it. Bam, bam, bam. Took him to the ground, smashed his head off the curb, knocked him out. I got in a chain. I used to wear a chain, and I fought 3 of them with knives. And the Beastie Boys were there. Everybody was at this show. It was the Bad Brains and like Subhumans or DOA.
What year would this have been?
80.
80, okay. And the Beast Boys hadn't yet come out?
Nah, their first show was 81. They opened up for Bad Brains at Max's Kansas City.
Okay, gotcha.
So this was pre.
But all 3 of them were there?
Yeah, they were there.
Okay.
And none of them were helping me. I'm like, yo, get the fuck out of here.
They're the rich boys from up there.
Yeah. None of the punk rockers helped me. I'm fighting fucking 3 dudes trying to stab me with knives. And I lose the chain, and then I'm like dodging and running in the street and fucking like just missed. I mean, they're trying to fucking kill me. And then as I tried to run back into 171A, they fucking tried to close the door on me, and I pushed my way through. I got stabbed in the shoulder, and then I couldn't go down to Alphabet City. They put a TOS, terminate on sight, on me, so I couldn't go down there for like months, like 3 months. And that's where all the gigs were, A7, all that shit.
Right.
So I was like...
A7 used to have punk gigs.
Yeah, okay. A7, yeah. And now it's... It was King Tut's Wawa Hut. Now it's called something else.
Restaurant or something.
Jesse Mallon's place.
And you live around there now.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you ever
I'm
walk
still
by there and get flashbacks and think,
Yeah.
Jesus, I got stabbed here. The Beastie Boys here. I have my chain here.
All the time. I do walking tours, like I said. It's been on the Today Show, NBC. They're like, this is the most informative shit you'll ever hear in your life. Not with those exact words, but from somebody who was around, like personal anecdotes and shit I've seen. So people really love it because it's not like some... Like the other tours, it's like motherfuckers read shit on Wikipedia or whatever. I'm like, I live this shit. Like, this is the real, like what I told you before about Joel Rifkin, the serial murderer, 22 women he killed somebody on Alcine, and that's how he got caught. But it was just, and I was on drugs even the night that I fought those Spanish dudes. I took a Quaalude, a Gorilla Biscuit, so you want to try to fight everybody. And I didn't give a fuck. And I just was like, so then the Bad Brains ended. Finally, I went down there and I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to confront them. Because I heard they was outside 171 with guns, like looking for me. So I just walked up one night. I said, all right, motherfuckers, let's do it. And they're like,
the drug dealers.
To the drug dealers. And they surrounded me. And just as they did, Doc, the guitarist of the Bad Brains and the bass player of the Bad Brains, Daryl, ran out and were like, yo, 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 yo. And they had kind of developed they were talking.
Okay.
And the only reason that they halted was because the Bad Brains were black. If it was white dudes that would have ran out, they would have shot me.
All of you.
So they were like, yo, 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 chill, chill. Like, and it was the main guy was there, Eddie, and he's like one of the main dudes. And they were like, yo, you tried to fucking stab my man, and he was defending himself, and the shit got out of hand, but and the dude just looked at me, and it was that moment where like, am I gonna kill this dude, or what am I gonna do? And then he just was like, yo, you got heart, white boy, and just and he said, his exact words were, out of all these motherfuckers that hang out here, you're the only motherfucker that got heart out of all these white boys. And they gave me respect. And we're like, yo, that's when the Bad Brains gave me a job as their roadie, because they were like, this motherfucker will fight anybody. And they were touring down south. And they let me live in the studio, and then they got me a job at a health food store. So I started going to yoga, started eating right, 81.
81. Okay.
Bad Brains were like, you could come on tour with us. HR was like, but you can't eat meat, you can't drink, and you can't take drugs. And I was like, bet.
Because is that Rastafari stuff?
Yeah, Rastafari.
They don't drink?
Nah, man.
And no
they
drugs,
might have a Guinness or whatever, but
Okay.
it's not like,
And no drugs, but obviously marijuana is different.
Yeah, weed, ganja.
That's a sacrament.
Yeah.
Okay.
They smoke chalice, what they call it. So it's not really like, like a drug addict smoking weed. They'll, it's a different mentality.
Okay.
So I just
you went down with that because you needed the tribe. You needed family, didn't you?
Well, it was like I needed healing is what I needed, because there's a lot of shit that I was still harboring. And
how old are you now? 20?
Nah,
19?
I'm not even. I'm like 19. It's
Okay.
81, the beginning of 81.
You've been sprinting your whole life at this point.
Sprinting, running from shit. And I'm AWOL, mind you. And so hanging out at 171, that's when the Cro-Mags started in 81. It was the Bad Brains manager on drums, me singing. Bass player was Harley Flanagan, and then the guitar player was this dude, Dave Stein.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I'm going out on the road with the Bad Brains, and we went down south. Nobody knew they were black. They were playing biker bars, and they're like, the fucking band is niggers, and like that type of shit. And we were just like throwing down.
How'd that go over?
Because the manager didn't send promotional flyers that the Bad Brains were black with a photo.
Right.
So we walk in the first club, the Big Bad Wolf, it's all bikers, and they're like, what the fuck do y'all want? I'm like, what? I said, we're the band. He goes, y'all ain't the fucking band, man. The Bad Brains are the band. And then Doc holds up his guitar case with a Bad Brain stick. He's like, yo, buddy, we're the Bad Brains.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
I hit rock bottom, and I hooked up with this like really wealthy girl, and I went on a 2-year, first started out Santa Monica, Pacific Coast Highway, living in mansions next to the people who own Post cereal. And by the time of 2 years ended,
to the West Coast, just with her.
Because she was a model and was here, then she moved back to California, but she was fucking gorgeous. And all this shit was going down. So at first I go to Florida with this other guy, Crazy Dave, this Cuban who I lived in Daniel Rakowitz's building with. That was a squat, killed his girl, made soup out of her.